hour. So I'm going to get us started. I want to be conscious of everyone's time today. Hello and welcome. My name is Lisa Jordan. I'm the Managing Director of the IEA, and I'm also the Executive Director of the Executives Association of Charlotte in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've seen some of you before on past webinars, but for some of you, it looks like it's your first time. So thank you for joining us. These webinars we offer monthly. They are free for you to attend and free for you to host. So if you have a great topic that you would like to share with business owners across the US and Canada and now Great Britain, then I would love to talk to you about hosting a future webinar. We are still booking them for 2026. So I'll throw my contact information in the chat and we will get connected on that. Before I hand it over to Tucker, I just want to put in a quick plug for the IEA conference. You may have heard that the IEA is hosting a conference in conjunction with the Akron Executives Association coming up here at the end of September. It is just going to be here before we know it. So September 30th through October the 2nd. We're excited to be taking all the conference attendees up to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. We have some amazing keynote speakers that are going to be joining us, including a couple of folks from the Seattle execs, where Tucker's joining us from today. And we're just looking forward to a really great conference. So if that's something you're interested in, or if you have questions about it, feel free to shoot me an email as well. I would love to help you get registered. And I still have an early bird discount code that I am willing to share with anyone on this call. So let me know and I'll help you with that. Okay, next, I am going to introduce our speaker today, Tucker Miller. Tucker's a member of the Seattle Executives Association and is an executive coach, attorney, former HR executive, and founder of Onward Leadership. Over the past 35 years, she's worked with leaders across Fortune 500 companies, startups, government agencies, and professional sports organizations, helping them overcome the leadership habits that often limit growth, create bottlenecks, and keep businesses overly dependent on key individuals. Her work focuses on helping executives and business owners increase their impact, strengthen their teams, improve decision-making, and create more capacity for strategic leadership. Known for her practical approach and engaging style, Tucker combines real-world leadership experience with actionable tools that leaders can immediately apply to improve results at work and quality of life at home. I'm excited for this one, Tucker, so you just take it away here.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, all of you, for carving some time out of your day to spend with us together. And I want to start with a question for us to think about. And let me just ask, can you hear my dog barking in the background? Please say no. You hear it?
Oh. I mean, just like a little bit. It's not distracting. You're fine.
I'm very sorry about that.
You're fine. We all have dogs barking in the background. You're fine.
Yeah, thank you. So just to get us started, we're talking about the hidden cost of success. And some of you might be thinking, what? There's cost to success? All I want is more success. I want you to think about this question. In what ways do successful business leaders like you become the obstacle to your own success? So this is a 45-minute or so webinar for us to engage in this topic. It is going to be interactive, but let me assure you, there will be no breakout rooms. Nobody will be called upon. I encourage you, more than taking screenshots, take some notes. I'll have some questions for you to think about. I'll have an assessment for you to pause on. Your notes are far richer than anything else that you might snap off the screen. So please consider your interactivity to be optional if you want to go public with it, but anything that you're doing to consider and reflect is spot on. That's great. So I want to start with Henry David Thoreau. Success usually comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it. Now, no shade on Henry David Thoreau, of course, but I want to suggest that perhaps the challenge for all of us is that we allow ourselves to get too busy and we blame the circumstance rather than really thinking about what's the challenge that I need to address. So here's my question for you, and feel free if you want to type a response in the chat. If you feel that you are at least sometimes too busy, where is your time going? We've got meetings, email, customer issues, the fires that we put out, the crisis, the hiring How do we recruit and sustain talent? Customer issues. I thought that might be the case for you, John. What other challenges take you away from a successful business leader? As you think about those places where you sometimes, or more frequently than you like, feel or get to be too busy, please know this: you're not alone. Time scarcity is one of the biggest challenges that leaders face. It is a major driver of stress, and only 30% of leaders globally feel that they have enough time to fulfill their responsibilities. So I see a few heads nodding. You think about, what are the things that I'm not getting done every day, the things where I'm falling behind. You're in good company on that. Around 30 to 80% of executive time is spent reacting to problems rather than addressing proactive goals and strategy. And this is, I love Christine Porath. She talks about the cost of bad behavior. She's been around for years, but she says 40% of senior leader time is spent on resolving conflicts with customers, with team members. But you think about, if I were more proactive about how to address these issues up front, maybe I'd get a significant amount of time back. So I want to start with how I get distracted by items that are not relevant. And that's one of the challenges. We get caught up in the day to day and we start acting on those and we don't get the other things done. So there's a good reason for that. Let's look at this. This is the success paradox. You're successful. Why? Because you're a high performer. And as a high performer, you get really good and knowledgeable, expert with your 10,000 plus hours on solving problems. And then you get to the place where I'm solving every problem. I'm the mentor for a team. I'm the person who picks up the phone. I have now become indispensable. And this is the challenge, because as we become more indispensable, we can also fall into the trap of moving up the ladder and becoming ineffective as leaders. So to give you an example of this, let me share a story. This is Rob. Rob is actually a client that I've been working with, and he is, and by the way, all names and images have been changed to protect the innocent. So that being told, Rob is the CTO of a fast-growing technology company, and he is the guru. He is the go-to guy. He has all the answers. He has extensive experience and knowledge about tech issues, and he's become the go-to person that everyone comes with their problems. They don't come with ideas and solutions. They come with a problem, and he fixes it. He struggles on the C-suite team with strategic responsibilities, where he's planning, where he's working on supplier issues, and he is out of alignment with the expectations of his critical role because he's caught in the fixing and doing instead of leading and growing his team. I will pause for a moment and say it's that kind of story that I see across industries, across companies, and it's the very reason why I do the work that I do. I've been in business, as you heard, for over 35 years, and one of the things that I notice is that there are very specific patterns in leaders, regardless of the company that they're in. You could be in a small startup, you could be in a large corporate organization, you could be in a sports team. Wherever you are, leadership has some very consistent challenges, and it's those kinds of challenges that I am particularly passionate about helping people to address. So let's look for a moment at what happens when leaders carry too much. We notice very quickly if people seem busy. And it's interesting, at times when I have been very busy, people have started to not make time to talk with me because they're protecting me from added busyness. So they're noticing the busying, but they're working around the conversation that perhaps we should be having. And you start to think beyond the busyness of life. What's the impact to the business when I start to think about what's the processes that are being given short shrift? How are people not being engaged, retained, developed, and attracted? And what happens to our strategy when we're so caught up in the day to day or those items that we respond to that are not really all that relevant? What happens? What we see is you, as the business leader, may become the decision factory, like Rob. Your team stops growing because they depend on you for every bit of decision, every bit of direction, and ultimately strategy. What strategy? Who's got time for a strategy? We've got problems that we need to solve, and yet we're not planning for the future. So we think about these hidden costs, the things that we don't readily see that are causing a drag on our results. The data shows us that the impact can be significant. And in fact, there was so much data on this, it was really hard to pick a few, and I know it's still too many words on the slide, but just to give you some perspective. Leaders spend up to 70% of their time making decisions, not strategy, just the stuff that they won't delegate to their team or haven't developed their team to handle. Managers spend 40% of their time firefighting. I see Teresa's comment there. I'm trying to have my team think of themselves as leaders so they can own it. And it's very challenging, especially if you have a team of people who've looked to you over and over and over for direction. And now you want them to be leaders. It's a process. Companies with highly engaged teams are automatically more profitable. So if you want to grow your business, there's an opportunity there. Leaders account for 70% of the difference between highly engaged and disengaged team, and 40% of executives report frequent exhaustion and stress. These are the signals that burnout is a coming, and we need to do something about it. So these hidden costs are exactly the concerns that we're trying to address when we think about how are we setting up our process, how do we support our people, and how do we create more time for us as business leaders to be strategic? So here's a question for you, and if you would, put your answer in the chat. As between these four options, which one is most like you? 1, I need to solve everyone's problems. 2, I rarely have uninterrupted thinking time. 3, my team waits for me for direction. Or 4, I feel constantly busy but not strategic. There, Joseph got us started off. Yeah, you might be more than one of these things. I see that with you, Teresa. Definitely. I am so busy. I'm not being strategic. I'm just handling the day to day. There's definitely a pattern here in those responses. So it often, as Teresa indicated, let's see, John, yes, 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 I do it all. Okay, good for you. So you'll really enjoy the rest of this then, I think. I think it's also interesting to notice, as Teresa mentioned, 1 and 4, it's really hard to not feel busy if you're having to solve everyone's problems. So they are definitely things that go together. So this is just one of those places of awareness. So in the work that I do, I mentioned to you that I look at what are the patterns that are common to all leaders. And it's fascinating to me. Every company that I work in, they'll say, well, you don't understand. We are unique. We have a very different model. Every company is different, but the challenges of leaders are very, very similar. I hate to tell them that, but I'm going to tell you that we all see patterns. So looking first and foremost, what's one pattern that keeps leaders stuck? You've identified. I love being the hero. I have to be the hero. I'm the only hero there is. But the hero trap, where I'm the person who has to get everything done, I have all the answers, and nobody could survive without my insights and knowledge and expertise. That's fair, particularly if you've been a high performer, that you start thinking that way, but it will be a habit that gets you stuck. Here's another one. This is the control trap. I worked for this leader. Maybe you know a leader like this. I can't agree to anything unless I've studied it extensively. I need to be involved in every single decision. I have to have my fingerprints all over every decision, everything that we do, and every product that we have. That's a control issue, and it will really bog things down. And finally, the last one is a little bit subtle, but let me explain. It was really hard to come up with an image on this, but if you think about that upward mobility, there's a point at which a leader is at the top rung of where they're growing. And that becomes the stuck place for everybody underneath them that sees the possibility of growing beyond or going further or even serving the organization. But if you have an insecure leader who's stuck at some place on that ladder, that becomes the stuck place for everyone else. So these three areas become the place where we get stuck. So I want to spend the rest of our time together thinking about a solution to this. What do effective leaders do differently? I will give you one key ingredient to the puzzle. And I say ingredient deliberately because every leader I work with has the model that has worked for them thus far. I love that. Letting go. You're right. The model that works is the one they want to stay with because it's what's made them successful. And this is particularly challenging when you're working with a C-suite leader or a business owner. This is the way I got to where I am. Do not muck with the recipe. This is how I'm going to go forward. And this is like the confining power of a comfort zone. Don't make me uncomfortable, because not only might I make a mistake, all eyes are on me when I'm at this level. I am feeling very, very vulnerable and fearful about shifting the recipe at this point. But here's the secret. E2E, you're on it. People who do best are people who are willing to try new things. The leader who's willing to let go, even just a little bit, is the person who's going to make the biggest difference. So in my experience, looking again at these patterns, I've noticed that there are 6 key leadership areas. These are high leverage leadership investments where if you focus on any one of these 6, and maybe 1 or 2 of these 6, you're going to start building momentum. So looking at them, we have the first one, team development. If you have a team, so often I see people onboard the team and they expect that they're going to do great. But it's really nurturing and growing that team, finding mentors for them, helping them understand not just what you need them to do today, but the why of this is how we do business. And this is where your mission, your vision, your values become really critical, because we're not just talking about the thing I need you to do today. It's the thing I need you to do to expand on our mission, vision, and values. Back in the day when I was hiring a team member, I would say the last thing I want you to do is exactly what I ask you to do. Because if you see a better way to do it, I want to hear about it. I don't need you to do the thing that I'm doing. I need you to bring your whole self to helping me do it better. So looking at the next one, I see there's some comments. Lisa, you can call out anything. I'm getting behind on the comments here.
Lots of good comments. Hal's talking about self-reflection and understand and accept what you're good at. Surround yourself, delegate, and trust others to help you with your blind spots. Also trust your gut.
Good. Yeah. And I see
Jacqueline
that.
says, I never thought of that, having a mentor for my team, not necessarily me doing that plus everything else I do.
You know, Jacqueline, it's the plus everything else I do that becomes kind of its own diagnostic. Because if we find that place where it's like one more thing, that's the opportunity to start thinking about what can I do differently to create more ease, not only for myself, but for my team. So delegation is one of the key areas to focus on. You're looking to match authority to accountability. So it doesn't happen overnight. It's not automatic, but it's part of that team development so that you can start assigning and supporting people so that you're letting go, but with the confidence and trust that they're going to do well. And then strategic focus. Let's imagine you've got your team growing and developing. They're taking ownership for processes. They are working well and you're delegating. Now look at what happens. You have time, if you have the diligence and discipline to take it, to be more strategically focused. And that becomes really a key piece. But let's go back and talk to Rob here a moment. Rob, as you remember, was a chief technology officer for the company. And I was working with him and I said, you need to find a way to start developing your people and delegating. And he says, we just don't even have the time for that. And I especially don't have time to watch my people flop around when they don't even know how to handle it. And ding, 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 I already know the answer. And it's that urgency about filling in the blank, solving the problem, giving the answer that is really the undoing. And what he's not seeing is not only does it weaken his team, it weakens his credibility within his colleague level at the C-suite, because everybody sees when that one person keeps over functioning to the detriment of everybody else and the progress that we want to make. So let's pause for a moment. What part of the strategy that we have here is Rob missing out on? If we look back at this, what does Rob need to do differently? What else does Rob need to do differently? This is the place where I'm going to trust that you're thinking hard on the answer, but this is one of the places where he said, I hate watching people flop around. And it's the flopping around that is the strength building. And that's the missed opportunity. And you're right. Um, Give railings, then trust, develop his team so they can make decisions on their own. And it may not be perfect the first time. It may not be as easy or as fast it would be for him, but in the places that he could carve out that little bit of extra time to just give them some space, it's like learning to walk. You're not going to learn to walk if you won't fall down. And I know that firsthand because I've been watching my grandson repeatedly fall down a lot. But he keeps getting up and he keeps getting better. And that's exactly what we want to instill in our teams, not expecting perfection, not expecting only your results outright, but giving them the space to figure out their own way can really make a difference. So let's look at the rest of these. That strategic focus will support more personal capacity. And that's why you're starting to think about what, not just what's taking up my time, but where is my energy being spent? Am I putting my energy towards things that make me more engaged, more fulfilled, more creative, more innovative? That's why we all get into business to begin with. Or am I putting all the work into things that drain my energy? There's a assessment that I use a lot with my clients. It's called the Working Genius Assessment. This will quickly identify the places where you can put more time and energy in, but it also helps you identify then what's the team that I want to shore up around me so that my personal capacity grows, but also I'm forming a team that I can delegate effectively to. This leads to decision clarity. Suddenly now we're not just responding to all the irrelevant stuff that comes in. We're making a very deliberate decision about what's the thing that I'm going to do differently and how am I going to work more effectively to get those results. So that clarity also cleans up your communication with your team. When I have the vision and know where we're moving forward, this is what I want to consistently convey to the team to help them perform at a high level. And then lastly, feedback. We are so used to reviews. We want to review, we want to Google review me on Yelp. I'm not sure that that's the only or even the best feedback to be soliciting. And you definitely want to be thinking about not just your customers and your clients, but what is your team saying? What are your peers saying? What are the places where you can shore up? And it's creating that atmosphere or environment where we can speak honestly with each other with the intention of doing better. So I'm going to go back to a comment I saw. The traction book, Getting Back into Traction, was great. And some of you may know the E-Myth, which came out long ago, but that's a great one. Traction, same way. And then when I've delegated, trusted, but for some reason, if they mess up, I'm not sure how to handle that conversation because they don't have to pay for mistakes and costs can be extremely high. This causes high stress and I have a big desire to trust, but it's already tough for me. And I have some tips for that. It's still important to have the conversation because your team is not showing up to screw up. Your team is literally showing up wanting to get it right. And if they don't get the feedback, even when it's hard, it doesn't instill the kind of environment where we're really supporting and growing. Great, I got the goal is not perfection. It simply makes sure it's done according to the standard, not the way I would do it, but sometimes a good enough standard is the process to get to better. Yeah, look at how they got to the decision and then coach the process. Thank you, John. So I want to share with you someone that I worked with. This is Cassandra, again, different name, different picture, but same story. I coached a senior leader who avoided a critical feedback conversation for months. By the time she addressed it, the issue had grown so large that not only did it affect the one person who wasn't performing well, it affected the team and ultimately her credibility. So every conversation delayed has a hidden cost associated with it. The goal here is to lean in and think, what's the conversation that needs to happen next? How can I do it? Incidentally, I have written a book on that. So if you're interested in the book, I'll give you my contact information later and we can talk about that. But these 6 habits are game changing. So I want to pause for a moment. What's the habit that speaks to you, perhaps? Where's your place of opportunity when you think about this? Thoughts, comments, chats, delegation. Yeah. I don't know why. Well, I think we heard why delegation is so hard. We have to let go, and we have to not be the star of the story here. Decision clarity, definitely personal capacity. That's an interesting one. I'll come back to that one, Alan. That's one that I'm also focusing on for myself. Development and delegation. Your team is there to help you succeed. Are you helping them succeed? So as you think about where do we go from here, what's the next step? We see the places where I need to focus a little bit more, but who has the time, right? All I'm asking for you is to just shift your thinking about this. This is where you have that private conversation with the lizard that lives in the back of your mind. And let me just say, everybody has a lizard. I even suggest to all of my clients that they name the lizard so that they can actually have a conversation with the lizard. This is that primitive part of our brain that says, you got to play it safe. You got to do it yourself. Don't expend any more energy than necessary. Something bad could happen. It's really, really critical. I think 1% is also a good place to start, Hal. So if you think about that lizard and how can you move beyond the place that wants to contain and keep us safe, how can you nudge it? Maybe 1%, maybe 5%. I think you're going to see a real difference if you say, I'm going to try 10%. Because if you use 10% as a metric, It could be 10% over the next 6 months, or 10% over the next month, next week, next day, however you want to phrase it. But that 10% compounds. You arrive at a new result and then you keep going. So you think about this as this is the gateway. My ability to quiet the lizard in the back of my mind and move to my prefrontal cortex and say, I'm moving forward. And I'm now a person who is learning to become a better leader. I'm a person who's leading my team actively and effectively. And showing up consistently doing that changes your results, changes how you see yourself, and it makes the behavior so much more automatic where you're not being drained with, well, what do I do next? What's the next 10%? I just show up being better every day. So before I go to the assessment, let me just look quickly at the chats. Yeah, there we go. I'm a new student again. If you're lucky, you will be a student for the rest of your life. That makes you a better leader. So let me put this in front of you, and this is a place I want you to write down your numbers. You do not have to put it in the chat. This is private for you to do whatever you want with, but I do encourage you to respond. So you're going to be presented with a statement, and if you strongly disagree, that's a 1. If you just disagree, that's a 2. If you just agree, that's 3. And if you strongly agree, it's 4. We're not going to add up the scores. I want you to notice the scores and where are they showing up as we look at this list. So this is your leadership snapshot. I consistently delegate decisions to the appropriate level. I trust my team and they make good decisions without my direct involvement. I protect time each week for strategic thinking and planning. I give and receive candid, actionable feedback regularly and consistently. I know which activities only I can do, and I focus on those. And I manage my energy as carefully as I manage my calendar. And that last question really goes to that place of personal capacity. That's where how we take care of our health, how we take care of ourselves, literally impacts every aspect of our lives. So as you look at those scores that you came up with, let me ask for your feedback and response. Were there any surprises there? And if there were, what did surprise you? Now, I can tell from the few expressions I see that there were some surprises. No surprise at my lack of focus on strategy. Thanks, Ellen. I could tell. They're kind of what I expected, John says. All right. I've improved over the last months. It's Jacqueline, right? Is that right? Okay. I improved over the last months from where I was, and I still put myself last, though. So there's an automatic opportunity. Protecting time for planning hasn't been made. I didn't realize how much I don't protect my energy. These are all your next opportunity. So as you think about the high performing that got you to where you are, the question becomes, how can I mitigate or eliminate this barrier from going to the next level? So importantly, you don't have to be a different person to be successful. You're already successful. You don't need to become 100% different. Just look, and I'm going to come back. Maybe it's only 1%. If that's what you're comfortable with, Hal, that's fine with me. But focus on being better, not different, and really lean into 1 or 2 of those 6 areas that I identified because it will make a difference. Couple of books that might be useful. You mentioned Traction, Jacqueline. I mentioned, no, I guess I didn't. Darren Hanby, The Compound Effect. There's that 10% over and over and over. And the other one that I really love is The Power of Habit. And many of you are probably familiar with General with Atomic Habits. That's good. But I really like The Power of Habit. I think it's great. It talks about the keystone habit. And that's largely what we're focusing on. What's your keystone that will hold it all together and everything cascades from there? You can be better. You will be better when you focus on these things. So we started with what are the obstacles that might get in our way? We've untapped some of those obstacles and challenges. So this is where I want you to just jot down a response to these questions, because this becomes the beginning of the action plan. And I don't want to spend any of your time today without giving you a solid takeaway. So the question here is, what's the one area where improving it by 10%, or whatever you choose, would have the greatest impact on your business or your team? Where do you want to focus that to get better results? Second question, what are you holding on to that someone else on your team could own or could grow to own, or you could hand off? But where's that place, Jacqueline, that you were talking about? Where can I let go? That's pretty juicy right there. I will tell you, when I started my business, it didn't take me long to let go of, I'm not doing any bookkeeping. Wherever I can find a bookkeeper, I'm going with that person. So some decisions are easier than others. That one was very easy. And then lastly, where does your team slow down or stop without your direct involvement? And I go back, Teresa, your comment that getting your team to own their decisions is one of those places. And so where does your team slow down? When you identify that, that also points to, okay, here's the next step that I want to take. So here's the place we start at. You cannot get to point B until you tell the truth about where you start at point A. So congratulations, you got that. Now let's talk about this. What are the 3 commitments that you make? And I will say these are commitments you make to yourself, unless you choose to open it up and be accountable to each other with other people on this call or other people in your life. But importantly, you don't have to climb the mountain. You have to find a way to get through it. So it starts as simple as naming your one area. So in those places where you're like, I need to work on it all, just start small and let it naturally build. You'll see the results. Define the shift. What are you going to do differently? What does 5 to 10% better look like? It may be taking the time to get outside every day. It may be setting time aside. These are the only times I'm going to do email today. It could be any number of things. You know better than me in your business, but thinking about what's the shift I'm willing to make, and then set. I'm going to suggest right now, give yourself a 30-day marker on your calendar where you're going to check in with yourself or with someone else to see, what am I noticing? Because here's another secret I see with very successful leaders. They never give themselves credit for what they're doing well, except maybe the narcissistic ones, and there's those here and there. But I'll ask people, well, what went well? I need to work on this. I'm not good at this. We're all wired with that lizard in the back of our head to focus on what we need to do better at so we can feel safer and manage our energy better. But take the time at that check-in to say, this is what I'm noticing that's actually getting better. I'm getting stronger, and I'm seeing these kinds of results in my team. If you don't do the check-in, you'll never notice it, and you'll miss the opportunity to further develop your team by recognizing them for what they're doing well. So I want to offer to all of you who are here a complimentary session that, yay, she says, 45 minutes We'll review your leadership snapshot or anything else you want to do. We'll identify one or two habits that you can focus on and then build a plan for improving. So honestly, it's probably more like 60 minutes. We'll see how it goes. But that's available for the first 8 people who reach out to me and say, yes, I want to take advantage of that. I would be very happy to help you and to work with you. So here's my contact information. And while you're jotting that down, if you want, anyone who wants copies of these slides, I happily will share them with you. Just send me an email and say, I'd like to see those slides. If you want the complimentary session, send me an email, let me know. I would love it if you would connect with me on LinkedIn. And I also have a bi-monthly newsletter on leadership that I would encourage you to subscribe to if you're interested. So that would be great. So Lisa, any comments, questions in the chat? And for any of you, I'm willing to give you your day back if you would like.
That was a great presentation. Thank you, Tucker. If you have comments or questions, feel free to unmute yourself. We have a couple minutes here. Happy to take a couple of those or put them in the chat. If you're not at a place where you can unmute, that's fine too.
Great job, Tucker. Really enjoyed that thoroughly. A lot of great takeaways too. You provide a lot of value. I'm curious what you tend to find is the biggest barrier when you come to a leader that they deny. You said you took the elephant in the room, which is like, well, you don't understand my business. I'm unique, all that. But what is it? What is more the personality trait that you feel like you have to overcome the most with leaders before they're ready to start making changes?
Yeah. Some of it depends on the circumstances by which I get introduced to the leader. So if it's an intervention, we've got a problem, there's going to be a little bit of hesitation, but once that trust is established, which usually doesn't take more than 20 or 30 minutes, then it's fine. I think the biggest challenge has been when someone says, I still don't know if you really understand me well enough or the environment that I'm in. And so the answer to that is, well, let's get some other people's feedback on that. Let's bring your leader in. We'll get them as a source of input. It's usually something I've already addressed, but if they hear it from their leader or they hear it from their peers, then they can hear better from me. So I'm currently doing a 360 set of interviews to bring that information back to hopefully give the individual I'm working with greater confidence that, yeah, I understand, but here's the feedback from your peers. This is what they're seeing too. And I think that's been for him a barrier that I do see from time to time, but often people are so grateful for a safe place to talk about what's really happening behind the curtain that it's not as challenging as I would have thought initially. Great question. Anyone else?
For your contact information, best way to reach you is tucker@onwardleadership.com.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Jacqueline, your audio isn't working. Did you want to put a question in? Or
yeah, go ahead
okay.
And put a question
All right. I saw you come off of mute. I thought maybe you would. Oh, thank you. Yes. So Jacqueline's question. I've worked internationally. I've worked with all manner of people. You know, the question is not so much the communication barriers with those individuals as their willingness to hear and learn. And so your question doesn't worry me, but we'd need to think about, you know, what's the response thus far? Because it might be more of an individual issue than people who speak a different language or come from a different culture. Is that responsive to what you wanted?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I just switched to my cell phone. Yeah, I think that, you know, I love my team, and they are probably the hardest working people I've ever met. Very diligent in what they do. Um, but the communication, if something does go wrong, it's like I'm still the one that has to pay for something if something goes wrong, and that could be thousands and thousands of dollars on a small t-shirt order, and it's just like I can't have that because of the quality, and my accounts are so large. I just can't have that happen
Right.
because that one account is like, it's just too much to mess with, and I can't afford to lose that. So, and I even repeat, hey, this is what we need to do. This is how it needs to happen. Could you please repeat back to me what you heard so that I make sure that we're on the same page? Awesome. They repeat exactly the same thing, but then it comes back not even the same way. And I'm like, it's clear as mud.
I have some thoughts on that. I have a
I would
feeling we'll
love.
be talking about it when we
Oh,
get
yes,
together.
we're going to be best. I'm ready.
Yeah, yeah. I think, they can repeat back the words you said, but they may not have the appreciation or understanding of the impact for getting it wrong or the real meaning behind what you said. So that's,
I don't want to make them feel bad either. If they've made a mistake, genuinely made a mistake, just own up to it. I will also own up to my mistakes, but don't skirt around it. And I have to tell them to be more forward with me, but that's not really their culture.
that's
I'm like,
right.
hey, if I'm not doing something that you don't like, you need to tell me because we're a team.
And they won't tell you, I'm sure. Because
They've done better.
Okay.
We do like monthly meetings now, and I'm like, hey, I want to create a safe place where we can grow as a team. I can't do this without you. We're moving forward, and I would like to know if I'm holding you guys back, if I'm coming in too much, or what have you. Because I'm building my own CRM, so I'm digging deep into details right now. So they may be feeling that, but at
Yeah.
least they've let me know. So we
Yeah.
have improved on that. Yeah.
Okay. I think we can explore that a little bit more.
Awesome. Would love to.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. All right, Teresa, I saw your note. All right. Any other questions?
Well, just a reminder, this is recorded and is available on the IEA YouTube page that will be up in the next 24 to 48 hours. So if it was great content and you want to go back and play a piece of it again or play it for someone in your team or in your life, then I'm happy for you to share that. And just thank you, Tucker, for being with us today and sharing your knowledge and skills and everything with the IEA. We're pleased to have you, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Tucker. Great job.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Lisa.
Alan.